Me and my brother were talking about some Path of Radiance stuff one day, and we started talking about Ike and his growth as a character. At the beginning of Path of Radiance, he's a rookie. The other members of the Grail Mercs look down at him as a super inexperienced mercenary. Then by the end of Radiant Dawn, he cemented himself as a legend of his continent. We eventually got on the topic of how good the story as a whole is, and we wanted to figure out what the best chapter from the game was. And after rewatching some cutscenes again and playing the game a bit, I gotta say that my favorite chapter is Chapter 8, Despair and Hope. Up until Chapter 7, Shades of Evil, we don't exactly know how strong Grail really is, but he's hyped up to be strong as shit. I mean, just look at this guy when there's dialogue. He's bigger than Gatry, and Gatry's gigantic. He barely used any of his actual strength against Ike in the prologue, and he held the rear entrance in Chapter 5 by himself. He basically just gives off the vibe that he's unmatched in battle.
Well, Ike, you had enough?
Also, he can use Aether, so that's sick. His strength can be vouched for by his confidence in battle. A few turns into Chapter 7, Petrine, one of Dane's 4 riders, shows up and starts talking shit. But then Grail shows up, crits this soldier, and gives commands, saying he'll distract the woman. Not distract General Petrine, or distract Petrine of the 4 riders. Nah, you're just a woman in his eyes, you don't get a title. But he tells Petrine that he can't fight to his full strength in the room they're in, so they go have their fight in a nearby room. At the end of the chapter, we get to see how Petrine and Grail's battle is going. Petrine refers to Grail as a demon, so we know whose ass has been getting beat. Then, Dane soldiers interrupt the fight, but they get ganked by Gallian forces. GG's. But then the Black Knight appears, and him and Grail have a little anime stare down. And I think this is the first time we get to see Grail be hesitant in combat. Even in the dialogue after that event, Ike asks for Grail's approval on the current plan, but Grail is clearly not focused on the conversation. He's thinking about something else. After the group rests up at Jabal Castle, we see Grail going for a walk, and Ike running up to him asking what's up. Grail tells Ike to go back to sleep, but then Ike starts acting like a teenager, so Grail asks Ike to take a walk with him. Grail asks Ike about how being a merc is so far, and Ike tells Grail that he's confused that he's suddenly putting so much faith in Ike. Grail out of nowhere asks Ike if he remembers anything about his mom, then tells him to go back to sleep and leave him. Ike waits for Grail to walk a little bit farther and then sprints after him. He clearly knows that his dad is about to get into some shit.
Father, what's going on? Where are you?
Ike rushes to the scene to find his dad and the Black Knight duking it out.
Lock and reload, dude.
But the Black Knight gets a clean hit in and mortally wounds Grail. This is when we get to hear Black Knight's theme for the first time. Sick. The Black Knight then proceeds to ask Grail to give him what he came here for, but Grail says he doesn't have it. So the Black Knight threatens Grail by saying he's gonna hurt his son and daughter. Ike tries to scrap with the Black Knight, but then he gets bodied by just a single shove. Everything looks pretty shitty for Ike, Grail even telling him that he can't win, but just then the King of Beasts comes through and intimidates the Black Knight. As he retreats using warp powder, rain begins to fall, and Ike starts to bring his defeated father back to the castle. And as Ike carries Grail back through the clearing of the woods, approaching the castle, some of the thoughts running through his mind must be, who was the Black Knight and why does he want to kill my dad if he taught him how to fight? How the hell did my dad lose the fight so easily if he taught him how to fight? What does the Black Knight even want from my dad? If my dad, who is the strongest guy I know, get killed by this random knight, is there any hope for us? What's gonna happen to the company? Is the Black Knight gonna kill me? If so, when? And what are these horrors that he will visit upon my sister? How are Mist, Titania, and the others going to react to the news that my father is dead? Grail, with his last few breaths, tells Ike to take care of everything in his stead, and to not seek revenge on the Black Knight, to live in peace. Ike, about to pass out, reassures his father in his last few moments that he'll be alright, and to not speak like that. But Grail passes away in those moments, his last word being the name of his daughter, Mist. As the camera pans up, the rest of the Grail Mercs ride out to go find where Ike and Grail have been, and Chapter 7 comes to a close. Okay, now that I've talked about the story elements happening in Chapter 7, you have some kind of an idea of the vibe of Chapter 8. And this is before you know the entire story of Grail, the Black Knight, and Tellius as a whole. The significance of the ending cutscene of Chapter 7 pretty much sets up the entire mystery of the identity of the Black Knight, and is pretty much the dawn of when Ike begins to prove to himself and to others that he isn't just a rookie anymore. And we get a big glimpse of that in the next chapter. Chapter 8, Despair and Hope, opens up with Ike remembering a time when he was training with his father, as he and Mist are by Grail's grave. Irvin and Aretha Flowers are resting with Grail. And this cutscene and the following cutscenes in this chapter hit me pretty close to home nowadays. When I first saw this cutscene, I was 10. I didn't really understand the emotions behind Grail's death, but, it was definitely sad. I'd never gone through losing a loved one, let alone one of my parents before. But last summer, my dad passed away due to lung cancer that he's been fighting for a few years. And I'll always remember all the emotions I felt ever since my mom told me that he had lung cancer years ago. I remember thinking to myself at some point during that ordeal that he was already dead because of how depressed he was, and how quiet he was, and yet still tried to make sure me, my mom, and my brother were alright. Yet, to have your dad robbed of you in one night is a completely different experience than the one I went through. I really feel for Ike. Oh, and Mist. After my dad passed away, I started to just want to preserve the people close to me, just like Ike. I wanted to protect them all. My friends, my family, the girl I was in love with. That was really the only thing I cared about. I guess losing a loved one is just an experience that everyone has to go through at some point, and everyone has unique reactions to it. What I think hurts the most is when they're taken before their time. Back at the castle, the mercs are trying to gather their feelings. Reese and Rolf try to help Mist get some sleep as the others stay awake. Ike gives his thanks to Titania and Soren for sticking by with Ike during this difficult time. But of course, it's their pleasure. Just then, Boyd and Oscar return to the castle. They were trying to stop Shinon and Gatry from leaving. You can really see how much of an impact Grail had on all of them, being an actual father to two of the mercenaries, and being a father figure to the others. Understandably, they're all upset from hearing the news, some more than others, but Ike understands why they left. They didn't want to lose their life to an inexperienced commander. Ike, realizing the truth of the situation, does not want to give up the title that his father placed upon him, and decides to lead the Grail mercenaries. With everyone's approval, Ike asks Titania to help him out with the ins and outs of leading a mercenary company. But she starts overloading Ike with information immediately, and Ike pretty much just hears, so he just tells her to help him along the way, and to get some sleep. This is when the player unlocks the base, which is an extension of the battle prep screen in previous Fire Emblem games. You can shop, award bonus XP, assign and unassigned skills, manage inventory and convoy, do support conversations, and read info conversations that can give you items and extra pieces of the story. Personally, I think this is the best that the battle prep has ever been in the series. The first info conversation has to do with the merchant convoy that's decided to join Ike on his journey. They basically just tell you what's up and what they can offer Ike. The second info conversation has to do with Titania. She's crying and grieving over Grail in the woods, probably so that no one can see or hear her. I interpret this as Titania trying to keep up the image that she's strong and that the others can rely on her even though on the inside she's torn up over losing Grail. And I think Ike understands this. The third info conversation has to do with Rolf. He informs Ike that Mist is sound asleep. He also reassures Ike that Mist is going to be alright, because Ike is here with her. Then he runs off to bed. What a good kid. The fourth info conversation has to do with Boyd. Ike asks Boyd his honest opinion of Ike being the new commander. Boyd knows what Ike is capable of, and doesn't want him handling things if they get really crazy. And by the way, it's always going to be crazy. But Boyd respects Grail, due to the fact that Grail gave Boyd and Oscar an opportunity to work for him and take care of Rolf when he was a baby after their father died. Since Grail had faith in Ike, Boyd will too, not out of respect for the man who gave Boyd and his brothers a chance at life, but because the Grail mercenaries are Boyd's family now. Ike understands, and the two boys prepare to work themselves to the bone for the good of their family. The last info conversation of the chapter has to do with Rhys. Rhys has been praying for Grail, but starts to break down. He apologizes, saying that it must be harder for Ike than for him. Ike tells Rhys that Grail once told him that apparently, the more tears you shed for the dead, the more blessings they receive in the afterlife. But Ike hasn't been crying, so he tells Rhys to shed some tears for him. I'm not sure why Ike isn't crying. Maybe Ike is just so duty-bound to lead the Mercs in his father's stead that he isn't able to grieve properly. Once base preparations are complete, the story continues. The group decides that they need some new recruits, but heading to see King Gallia takes precedence. Just then, a ton of Dane forces are spotted outside Jabal Castle. Ike tells Mist to take Rolf and hide. Mist's medallion begins to glow and asks her mother and father to watch over Ike in this battle. Things look pretty bleak for the mercenaries as they're all still processing and grieving the death of Grail, but they have no intention of just giving up. Ike's first fight as a commander is about to begin. I also think it's perfect that the map theme for this chapter is called Grail Mercenaries. Also, it's still raining for this chapter. Nice touch. Okay, as for the gameplay of this chapter, it's a defense map. You gotta defend the green square for 8 turns. Pretty straightforward. The chapter itself isn't even that hard, just remember to recruit Ilyana with Ike and you should be good. In fact, if your units are good enough, they can probably just straight up route the entire map, even on hard. The sheer amount of Dane soldiers and their exhaustion catches up with them, so they retreat back to the castle. The scene pans to Titania, Soren, and Ike struggling to stay standing. But Ike refuses to die here, even if his wounds are too great. Mist comes out of the castle and says the ugly truth. There's no way in hell they're all making it out of here alive. But Ike reassures Mist that her and Rolf are gonna live. But Mist doesn't want that. She wants to stay with Ike, even if that means dying with him. She says that they'll see their mother and father again, and tells Ike to never say that he's leaving her again. Honestly, the scene is pretty dark. Mist is pretty much saying that even though everyone is going to die, at least her and Ike will be with their parents again. But Ike once again reassures Mist that she's not going to die. Grail entrusted Ike with taking care of everyone, so that's what he'll do. Depending on how you played the chapter, either the boss or a random Dane knight is about to lay the finishing blow on Ike. But just then, the Mercs are saved by 2 Lagoos, 1 cat and 1 tiger. The cat's name is Leth and the tiger's name is Mordecai. They've been sent to escort the Mercs to the King of Gallia. The Mercs also get a brief lesson on how not to be racist in Tellius, but Soren provokes them out of nowhere. Leth and Mordecai get pissed, and Mordecai jumps at Soren to attack him. But Ike takes the blow. Mordecai apologizes to Ike, but Ike apologizes back on behalf of his company. He explains that the Mercs, having lost Grail, Shinon, and Gatry recently, are affecting their mental states. The Lagoos accept the apology and state that they are to take them to the royal palace of Gallia. And the chapter ends here. I think that the chapter's name, Despair and Hope, is really fitting. In the beginning of the chapter, the story focuses on how the Grail Mercs grieved over the loss of Grail, and showed a glimpse of how each member was taking it. But then there was hope, Ike deciding to follow in his father's footsteps and become the new commander of the Grail Mercenaries. Morale was rising even in a time of grief. They would be able to finish their contract with Alencia and then go from there. They had a future to look forward to. Grail would be able to rest easier knowing his family were living fulfilling lives. But then the Dane forces almost crushed that dream by wiping out all of the Grail Mercenaries. Yet they were saved by the Lagoos, allies who would later come in clutch for the Mercs later on in the story. And so their dream can live on. The Grail Mercenaries went on a rollercoaster of emotions in such a short period of time. Some ups and really bad downs, like this was some sort of biorhythm. Huh. Anyway, yeah, I just really like this chapter a lot. The emotions, the dialogue, the music, everything. Path of Radiance has one of the strongest stories in the series in my opinion, and I love replaying it every now and then to remember why it's one of my favorite games of all time. Thanks for watching, and happy Father's Day.